I want to thank everybody for coming. I am Paula Ludwig with the Atlantic Institute. We are all about promoting different cultures, religions. Basically, our mission is, our vision is of a peaceful world. And by doing that, we want to expose people to different cultures, countries, stuff like that. And so we have this cultural creations class that we do. We also do a cuisine of different cultures. And that is actually next Saturday. So if you have a chance, you can sign up. You can sign up on Eventbrite or on the Atlantic Institute South Carolina website. We still have people coming in. This is awesome. If you weren't here when I asked before, if you could put where you're from in the chat, we do event audits, and it's fun to see where everybody's coming from. And I can see from the chat we are all from all over the world right now. And I was gonna play a video about the Atlantic Institute, but I am having problems with my internet on this end, and it won't let me play the video. So if you're interested in seeing that video, you can go to Atlantic Institute SC YouTube channel. And there's a video on there that explains about what the Atlantic Institute is about. And we do all sorts of different things. You can also look at our website, and we have educational, we have cultural, we have interfaith. So please check it out. And with that being said, I am going to turn this over to our instructor, Crytsal. And I want to thank Crytsal for joining us and for doing this wonderful event. And I am going to now spotlight her once I find her in our little thing here. Just a second, Crytsal. There you are.
Okay.
All right, Crytsal, it's all you now.
Oh, hi, everyone. So what you're looking at is my workspace. There's a little face of me somewhere in one of the screens, but today we're gonna make, I'm gonna show you how I make a basically a bottle opener using wood burning for art, or also called pyrography. And this is just that we're not doing this design. I'm gonna actually show how I do this design here from start to finish. And basically I'm just gonna, and I'll go over some of the basics of wood burning, the tools I use, the wood, the different kinds of wood and stuff. And then we'll get into the project itself. It's actually a pretty simple, easy, and pretty quick project, depending on how much of a design you want to use. So I love questions, so feel free to interrupt me with questions or put them in the chat, and we'll get your questions answered. And if I don't know the answer, well, I'll let you know, and we can move on. So, all right. So pyrography, or wood burning, is just basically writing with wood, with fire. And I'm going to move these out of the way. All you need for this is a piece of wood and something hot to write with or draw or burn with. In this case, I'm just using, this is one of the, probably the simplest basic tools that you can get at, here we go to a hardware store or online. This one I got from Walnut Hollow, which is an online store. So those are pretty basic. And this one has basically what we call a solid tip, which is a brass tip that gets really hot and will burn wood. So I'll show you real quick. This is my little practice piece here. And just using the hot tip, this one is a burner that doesn't have temperature control, so it's at the highest setting, but still lots of good projects can be done with that. So just to show you that real quick. And then more advanced tools might be something, that one's hot, so I gotta be careful. So this is what I call this is a wire tip burner. And I use this for my, my art projects that I use, that I sell. So, and that one you can get those at pretty expensive prices. I mean, you can get a wire tip burner for $100 or as much as $300, $400, $500, depending on how fancy you want it. So, but it sure makes burning a lot easier to have that wire tip. But there's many people who make incredible art with the solid tip burners. It just takes practice. The more you work with a pen, the better you'll get at it. So in general, today we're going to work with pine. This is probably not my least favorite. It's just really accessible and really inexpensive. So, and it works really nice for rustic type projects. So it's actually perfect for this project anyway. But it is a little more difficult to burn because it has a lot of grain, harder grain, and sometimes it can still have sap in it. Even the driest pine, you can still get a lot of sap. But anyway, so here, and then there's some other wood. So I have some projects that I've done, but I just want to show you examples of how they look with wood burning on them. So this is an example of cherry. This is just a found piece of wood that we cut and then I wood burned on it, and it has oil on it. I've oiled it so it's a little bit darker. So finishes will darken the wood for sure. But that's cherry, an example of cherry. This is poplar, also readily available at local hardware stores or hardware stores like that. And then this one has did some little trees on it, but it can have this green tinge to it, which some people like and some people don't like. But most of the time, it can be this nice kind of, you can see that on the same piece of wood. Got nice blonde wood and then some green. So, and then here's an example of some birch. Birch is nice and smooth. And then there's a project that was done with that. So pretty easy. And then one of my favorite woods to burn on is aspen. That's something that's easily available. I buy it online. I don't cut my own. I have cut some of my own pieces, but not aspen wood. And then this is an example of some wood burning and then something that I painted as well. So, and then basswood has a nice blonde color, a nice light color so that you can see your project really well. The contrast is really nice. It has a soft grain that isn't really obvious, but it's there. So it's kind of pretty in the project. So that's another one that once it's been burned and painted, it kind of still keeps its color. And this one actually has a finish on it and it didn't darken it too much. And then last thing, two more things you can burn on cork. Oh, well, it's not upside down. I guess it's your perspective, isn't it? Upside down. Anyway, so you can burn on cork. And last but not least, humble paper. You can also burn on paper, pyrography on paper. So lots of ways, and there's more than what I've shown you. That's just a few things I was able to grab to share. So I'm gonna
is that a special paper that you burn on, or
that one is watercolor paper. In fact, I just bought these like pre-made watercolor cards that you can get like at craft stores or hobby stores. And it's just it's nice because it's pretty thick, but it does have sizing on it like a lot of watercolors do. So it kind of is, it releases some fumes, and that leads me to safety, which is usually when I'm burning, I have a fan that I set right at the edge of my workspace, and it basically pulls the smoke away from my workspace and dissipates it. I work in a well-ventilated area, and I'll often have a window open. If the fumes if it's a particularly smelly wood, like say cedar or something, you know, you might want to wear a mask that will protect from fumes. But typically, if you work in a well-ventilated space and you have a fan, it'll keep those fumes away from you. So I like the smell of burning wood. Some people don't like it so much, but I do. So we talked about the wood burner, and then some other basic tools you'll want is sandpaper. And I just use like little scraps of sandpaper to work during the project. You also want to be able to have your piece well sanded before you start. But for working on a project, I keep sandpaper nearby to help with just fix areas that, you know, I don't like what I see, but I can kind of adjust some things. I use a wire brush. This is a soft brass wire brush, and I use it to clean my tip. So if my tip of my tool, which will happen with pine or cedar or any high resin woods, you'll get buildup on the tip. And I just use this brush and I just clean while it's hot, very gently, just wipe it on the wire brush. When it's cold, you can use like an emery board or very fine steel wool. You could probably use steel wool when it's hot, but I wouldn't, because you got to be careful with that. And then those are kind of the main tools. And then today I'm going to show you how I take this piece of wood, which I've sanded. So this has already been sanded. I did 100 grit to get most of the, to get it pretty smooth. And then I use a 220 grit to sand it finally. And if you do pyrography, one of the biggest things that you want to do is make sure your wood is sanded smooth. That's going to be probably the biggest thing that will help your projects not be frustrating. So it'll help them go smoothly. Your burns will be easier. And sand is the better you sand. You don't want to get too polished of a sand if you plan to finish your wood, because if you polish it real nice with a nice fine sand, 300 or super fine grit sandpaper, then it won't absorb the finish as well. But I often don't finish my pieces, so sometimes I will sand them down really, really, really fine. And today we're going to do this. I'm going to show you how I finish with a wood, basically what I call a wood conditioning oil that I make. It's just beeswax and food grade mineral oil. And I use it for all my cutting boards and anything that might, be in the kitchen or somewhere where food might come in contact with it. So we will get started. Do you have any questions? Oh, Nikki, you have the same wood burner. Cool. Yes, it's a great wood burner and it does all the, the basics. So, okay. So most of my art, when I do it, I draw right on the wood and I just use a regular pencil. I mean, like my favorite pencil is just, standard, just a mechanical pencil that's nice and sharp. I draw real lightly. I sketch the design on there and then I burn. But a lot of times the design's just there to give me a basic composition. So I might just draw, I'll use this for example, if I'm going to do trees, I might just draw some lines to give myself, I don't know if you can see. Yeah. So just some basic little lines. And I might say, okay, those are my tree trunks. And then I would come in with my tool and then that needs to be tightened and I'll explain all that. If your tool comes loose, like my tip just came loose, you can tighten it a little bit with a pair of pliers, but don't crank it down or you can break that brass tip. So anyway, I'll come through and I'll just add the tree to the trunk. So that's just an example of, how I'll sketch a basic design. But for people who are, newer at wood burning or want more guidance, I have these, you can use a pattern And in my case, I drew this pattern and then I printed it out. And I use this as, oh, you know what I didn't bring? I use carbon paper. So I'm going to be drawing my design because I don't have carbon paper because I'm in the process of moving and that is not in the house anymore. So, so I'm just going to, I'll sketch something very similar to this and we'll do it, but I'm going to show you how I transfer a design. So take the design and I size it, cut it so that it fits the piece of wood that I'm using. And in this case, this is like a 1x4. So this is about 3.5 inches across. And I center the design right where I want it. And then I take a piece of tape and tape just one side of it. So in this case, I cut everything off except I left a piece up here at the top for my tape to go. So I don't like cut out the whole entire design, just that. But I like to cut the shape pretty close so that I can see, imagine in my mind how it's going to look more easily than if I had this big sheet of paper sitting here and I get it centered. And then I would stick a piece of graphite paper underneath with the shiny side down. And I'm just going to use this little plastic sheet to demonstrate that. So I would do that, slide it under there, and then, where's my pen? Use a pen. I like to use a colored ballpoint pen when I trace my design because then I can see where I've been. And I would just do a basic trace when I would do a design. So let's say for this, I would just trace the shape of the mountains. I don't usually trace this shadow piece, but that is what you can do to get those shapes. And what'll happen is you'll have your piece, this is graphite paper, and it would transfer down onto here. And then you can burn that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a quick sketch with pencil, which is going to give you the same, kind of the same idea as what it would look like with graphite paper. So I'm just going to draw in. And you know what? I always encourage people to do their own drawings if they can, because it's more you and it becomes your own project instead of somebody else's project. But, you know, I understand if you don't feel like you can draw and you want guidance, it's easy. So when I do mountains, I just do a quick few upside down pyramids, and maybe I'll draw another one here. So I don't want to do too many because then we'll be burning for hours and hours, but we will get some of these done. So I would say that's a good little set of mountains, and then the trees. And when I trace these, I would just trace this outside edge. Okay, so I wouldn't color it in, just trace your edges because the wood burning tool will fill in the hole. You'll fill in the detail with the wood burning tool. So I'll just draw myself one here just so that you can see what it would look like if we were going to be using transfer paper. Oh, I'm really sorry about that. I don't even have any place I can run and go grab it because all my stuff is at the other house. Okay. So there we go. So there's an example of an outline tree, and I'll show you how we do that. Okay, so then I take my tool and, we can talk about tips real quick. I like to use this universal tip. For me, it's really versatile. So, cause I can use it to draw lines. I can use it to do curves. I can cut deeper into the wood and make a line thicker. I can also use the side of it and do shading as well and get like a softer look. So it just offers, for me, I like this tip. A lot of people, especially newer people, might want to use like a flow tip, which has a skinnier, easier kind of, it floats over the wood. It's a little easier to burn with when you're learning how. I didn't have one of these when I first started, so I just learned with this tip and I just got used to it and I really like it. So another one is this other flow tip, which is a fatter flow tip that works really well too. And I'll demonstrate these also as we go along, okay? So, and I'll show you how I change my tips. It's not best to change them while they're hot because you can damage the tool or damage the tip and you can burn yourself and, you know, can break the tool. But most people don't want to wait for this tool to get hot. So the tool itself, when you turn it on, it takes a good 5-8 minutes to be as hot as it's going to get and to heat up that tip. When you're changing tips, so if you want to wait till it's cool to change your tip, you got to shut it off. You got to wait. It takes a long time for it to cool off because it's intended to hold a lot of heat. And then you put the new tip on and then you wait. And so so most people don't have the patience to wait until their tool is cold. So I go ahead and I teach you a good way to change your tips. And the way I do that is I have a heat proof, some kind of safe dish. This one is ceramic. You could do a metal dish, something to drop your tip in after you, when it's hot, after you take it out. And so the way you can take out your tip is I use a pair of these long nose or needle nose pliers and grip the tip of the tool pretty firmly. And I want to make sure, you know, obviously enough to hold it in place. I want to make sure I have this right angle here when I'm doing this. And I'm going to hold this tip very steady and I'm going to turn the tool. Okay. So the main reason I make a big deal out of this is because if you twist with the pliers, you're more likely to make this motion and you'll just break that right off. It's when brass is hot, it is pretty fragile and so it can break. So then I just drop the tool right in there and then I get a fresh tip. And this is cold so I can touch it. And then I just do the opposite. I set up my 90-degree angle, set it in there, and then I just twist the tool until it stops. And then I don't crank it in because again, if you crank that tip in, you can break it off and then you're stuck with the half the tip in your tool. And you don't want that. I mean, there's ways to fix that, but it's kind of complicated. So actually I'm going to leave this on so I can show you because a lot of people like to use this tip and I don't mind using it today. So that's how you change tips. Okay. All right. So that other tip that I showed you, it tends to cut into the wood, whereas this flow tip, you see it pretty quickly heats up because this is the part that takes a long time to get hot. Those tips, they don't take too long to get hot. It kind of flows over the wood more, but it also tends to get stuck, not stuck, but be a little more bumpy. It's hard. It's just takes a little extra work to get it smooth because you're not actually cutting through the grain. You're just going over the grain. So, okay. So what I would do is I would take this, this is what I do, and I just go over my lines. And in this case, since I'm using this flow tip for pine, it likes to make these bumpy lines because it wants to just ride over each grain line. So see, it's not super smooth, but you know, if you're just learning how to do it, it's a good kind of practice. And I just go in short strokes and I don't try to you don't want to spend a lot of time with the tip in contact with the wood because it will, you know, in one spot, because it'll, you know, be you know, it'll burn into the wood and create larger, darker burns. But if you want it to be darker, you don't want to push harder. You want to just spend more time moving slowly over your section that you want to be darker. Okay, so I'm making this line thicker and darker, not by pushing harder, but by just gently moving more slowly. And I'm lifting this tool, keep lifting the tip up so that it doesn't, you know, just burn a hole into the wood. Okay, so you can make those lines pretty smooth by just working, you know, gently going over them. And slow is, you know, slow is good. Just take your time and you let the burner do the work. You don't want to push too hard, because not only can you bend your tool or bend the tip or break the tip, then you're more likely to have the bigger, what do you call it? Just bigger bumps in and bigger holes into your wood. So I'm switching back to the tip I prefer to use. So I can show you how that works. So this will take a few more seconds to get hot than the other one. So I always like to keep a piece of scrap wood nearby. It's nice when it's the same kind of wood that you're burning on, but it doesn't have to be. And I just kind of use it to test out, you know, if I'm going to try a certain kind of stroke with it, or if I'm going to try something new, or I want to see if it's hot enough. Like in this case, it is hot enough to start burning, you know. So then I can say, I do this even now. I don't always know exactly what I want the wood burner to do, so I'll get on here and practice a little bit before I go into my piece. So when I'm doing my mountains with this tool, I tend to cut into the wood more. So I'm just going to kind of do that with that. And then I just follow my lines. And again, I'm lifting the tool. I'm not pushing too hard. I'm just letting that knife edge kind of cut in gently into the wood. And I start where I want the line. Like if I want this edge, here's an example. So I don't want this line to go over this pencil line that I drew here. So I will turn my wood and I'll start there. Okay, so it's easier to control where I'm starting than it is to control where I'm finishing. So if I start here at the tip and I just kind of gently cut that through, burn that through, and then I'll stop just before I get to my line and then come back and finish that line from that side. If I'm worried about crossing over. If I'm not worried about crossing over, it doesn't really matter. So just do this on this side. Okay, so with this tool, with this tip, you can it's kind of fun to just let it kind of glide through the wood and not worry too much about following those lines exactly, the drawing lines. You can erase them later, but if you burn over them, so if I burn off my line, let's see, I'll do that on purpose here. So there I left some of that. The heat can set the graphite a little bit, so it can be a little harder to remove, but it is doable. So I'll show you that when we get to that point. So now I'm just drawing my mountain peaks with the end of my tool here. And I really like this nib or tip for pine, because it does kind of cut through that wood nicely, or through the grain nicely. So we're just gonna go ahead and get these mountain outlines all burned in. And my tool got loose again, so that can happen. And you just get a little snug tight, tighten it a little bit, and then just go back and do. So I move my wood a lot so that I can just draw the tool towards me instead of trying to readjust the direction that I'm burning. Some people, I've seen them burn in this direct, burn forward, but as you can see, I don't have as much control over that, but it's doable. But I tend to pull towards me, and it's what I teach people when I teach, because I feel like it gives you more control over what you're doing, because you're not pushing against the point, you're drawing it along that smooth kind of knife edge. Make sure we're still in the picture here. Yeah. Okay. So we're just finishing this up. So there's just my basic outlines, and then to color in so when I'm designing this, I make sure that all my shadows are on the same side of the mountain. It's just a basic principle. I pretend that there's some light coming in from this direction, and these sides of the mountains are all lit up. So the right side, and then the left side is where the shadows are. And I don't usually outline these. I usually just shade them in using kind of this side. So I'm holding the tool, I would say at about, I don't know, not 45 degrees, maybe 30 degrees from the wood. And I'm just moving in small circular motions to fill this in and shadow it. So it just looks more like rocks and shadows than lines that are cut with the burner. So kind of and it's kind of this gentle, I'm lifting the tool a lot. These are small motions. So I'm going to turn it sideways so you can kind of see that. You can get an idea of how that's going. Actually, let me do it on here because I will definitely. So if I have my piece of wood perpendicular, in order to get that shadow, the shading, I'm kind of tilting it. I'm not touching the entire flat side of the tool, but the kind of the tip of that flat side. So you can see the angle I'm working at there, right there. Okay, so probably 30 degrees off the wood. And that's how I create those, the shadows in here, shading. And if I want a little more definition, I'll just kind of lift the tool a little bit so that less of the tip is touching. And just these little, and you know, what's really great about mountains and trees is, you know, the shape doesn't have to be exact. So like I can just burn right over my pencil lines here. And then that way I don't have to erase them later. You can just kind of fill this in. So that's your basic, I mean, those are just two real basic techniques that will get you a long way. You know, just being able to do lines and shading. So I'm adding a little bit of darker shading on this one here. Just spending more time on the wood, going over it more. But still just barely touching it, because it's hot, very hot, and letting the tool do most of the work. And I'm just lightly, gently circling this tool around to create these kind of soft shapes. And I'll show you another way that I like to shade mountains, just for fun. Okay, so I'm just kind of going in here with the, and this is a pretty quick way to do it. You know, it's a hot tool. You just keep moving. Don't hold it too long in one spot. I'll show you what'll happen. So if I lose track and I just hold it there, you can see it quickly burns a very dark shape. Well, the shape of the tool. So that's an example of just letting it, and if I want it dark, I can do that. You see, I can kind of spend a little more time in that spot and make it nice and dark if I wanted to. And here in this case, I'm not doing so much of swirly motion as just like a gentle, kind of like a sweeping motion. So I'm lifting up the tool as I end my stroke. And I'm not touching I'm not putting any more pressure on here. I'm just going slower so that it colors it in darker. And then another way that is kind of fun to fill in the mountains, and it creates like I don't know, more like this one. So it's more of a geometric kind of shaping, and it's kind of a fun way to do it. I'll show you how I do that. And in that case, I will first trace I will first trace my shadow shape that I'm going to use. Okay. So this is a little more, instead of trying to be this, kind of get this soft organic feel, I'm going to add more kind of a geometric feel. I'm just going to drag this through, make a nice, dark line there. Okay, so now I have this solid line shape, and to do that shadowing technique, I just take this knife edge and I just cut a curve in there, or burn a curve, you see, and then I just follow it within the bounds of those lines that I drew. So then I want to go a different direction. So I'll draw a new line like this, and I've created this new shape I want to fill, right? So now I'm going to go, instead of going straight up and down, let's say I want to go this way. This is where I move my piece of wood a lot. And then I just follow that line, that shape again, just filling in the shape within those bounds with lines. So it creates kind of this shifting pattern. And so then my next one, let's say I want to do this, and I want to go another direction. So I'll just fill it in. Again, it's kind of a fun way to create a shadow, providing some interesting texture, and then you can feel it, and that's kind of cool too. And so then I'll just do the same thing here, and now I'll just fill this in. And I'm just using that, like I said, that knife edge to draw lines. And this one I'll do a little different. I'll do a curve. Curves are a little harder, but after a while, you get used to doing them there. And so that's kind of a different way to shade your mountains. And it provides that, I like that. I kind of like this texture. I do actually do a lot of my art with this style. And then another fun way, since we're here playing with this and I'm demonstrating and not making it a little more exciting, I'm gonna go back to my, let's do well, yeah, we'll do that one. We'll do this, back to this one, is to use stippling. And you can use the very tip of that universal tool, it makes little tiny triangles when you dot on the wood, but I'm going to use circles just to show you. So here's another example. Let's say I want to color it in with, and you can just start tapping that. It's not super hot yet, so not super dark, but so if I'm really light, tapping really lightly, it creates, you know, tiny little dots, and I can kind of expand those out, right? And make a lighter. So there's my lighter shading out there. And then here I want it darker. So then I would just make all those dots closer together. And it's really literally just tapping, tapping, tapping. To me, this is the most tedious way to shadow, but it is kind of cool. You know, it turns out it makes a really cool, a really kind of interesting shadow. So it is fun. It is fun to finish it. It just takes a long time to do it. So if you're a patient person and you enjoy it's kind of meditative to be doing the dotting over and over and over again. You can do bigger dots by just spending a little more time on the wood. So I'm not pushing harder. I'm just spending a little more time in each position, filling this in with little dots. So that's another way to fill in an area you just want shaded or filled in. And with these, you can just make them a little further apart to create a gradient of darkness. So it's darker, you know, where you fill them in close together, and then a little less dark as you pull away from there and make them further apart. So those are just some basic shading techniques. I'm going to switch over to that fat writing tip that I was telling you about earlier. And that one you can actually, you know, and this one as well, but the other one I like using for, the fat one I like using for actual lettering or writing actual words or a monogram or something. I just don't do it a lot, so I don't practice it. So I'm not as great as I'd like to be at it, because I prefer to just do the natural shapes. So this one has a fatter tip. Where's my practice wood? And I'm gonna wait for it to, yeah, it's already hot. So you see how it makes like a nice fat line. So I like that. And I'm gonna use that just to show you how I can use it, how it works on pine. So again, it likes to make that bumpy line, but look how easy it is to just fill that in. It's like coloring with a crayon. It's kind of the feel. And it colors it in quite nicely. So yeah, so just what I recommend with anybody new to wood burning is just play around and try different things. Don't worry about wasting, you're not wasting wood. You're just, you know, have fun with it and try the different things. So now I'm going to do the tree here, and I'm going to go ahead and just use this tip to fill it in. So it'll be fast actually if I do this. So you see, I'm just kind of now filling this tree, and I'm just, in this case, we're just doing like a basic solid evergreen shape. And this fat writing tool, it's a little harder to make nice sharp edges, you know, ends. They're more rounded, but it works for this. You see, and you can just fill it in pretty easy with that tip. And then I'll go back to do that over the dish so that it goes in where it belongs. Back to my universal, my favorite tip. And I'll show you the tree. We'll finish up the trees. Okay. So where's my picture? So I'm just gonna keep using this as my reference. I did several trees and I just come in with the side of this. I gotta wait for this one. It takes a little longer for this one to get hot. And I like to start at the very tip of the branch or the bough, or you know, whatever you wanna call it, of this. And then draw towards me so that it creates that kind of sharper edge that you would see with evergreens or pine trees, or this case, I live in Washington State, so lots and lots and lots of evergreen trees, especially cedars. And fir. And I used to live in Alaska, and big one there is spruce trees, which is also a lovely evergreen. So here you can see I'm just filling this in with that, with kind of the flat edge of this tip. So I'm doing that kind of that 30-degree angle again. Yeah, so you just take your basic techniques and you play around with them, and then once you practice, you get a feel for what you like to use, what works best for you. There we go. So it doesn't even, so you can see I used half the tree with this tip and half the tree with the other tip. And the biggest difference is just that the tips of my tree aren't as sharp. That's it. So it's pretty similar. And I can go in and just take this and just add some sharp tips to it. So there's no, you know, really no wrong way to do it. Unless you burn yourself or, you know, do something dangerous, then then you don't want to do that. But. And these trees that I would have in the foreground, I would make them nice and dark, because I want them, anything that you want in the foreground, you kind of want to keep it darker and have more contrast. Yeah, see, pine is so soft, this just burns right into it. Okay, and so then I would do, and I just kind of now just do some freehand trees, and I would encourage you, if you do this, to just have some fun and do some freehand trees. And you can give yourself a little bit of, you know, just give yourself a little help with a line. I'll even do that for myself. Just drawing that line to make sure I don't get off track and start making a super crooked tree, but crooked trees come crooked too. So, you know, there's no way that would be wrong. But if you want straight upright trees, then it helps to draw a little line. Okay, so then I can add my trunk to this one. Okay, so there's another one, and let's see. With this knot here, I can burn a tree or burn into it. It's going to be different, and it won't. I'll do it right now just to show you. So let's say this is the top of the tree, and you can see, I don't know if you can see that. I'll bring it a little closer, but the sap, there's still just a lot of sap in here, and you can see it smoking and bubbling. So typically I try not to burn on knots if I can help it, especially in pine. So that's that. So I'm just gonna continue this tree down. And I should probably, now I need to clean my tip off because it got some of that resin on there. So just clean that off. And now it'll burn pretty quick again because I removed that. Yeah, so now it'll burn very quick. Okay, so draw a little line on my tree and then just fill it in. Okay. More grain on this is harder to, so the grain next to the knot is also kind of difficult to burn over. But it's a tree, so it doesn't have to be smooth, super smooth. There we go. So I like to incorporate, if I can, I like to incorporate the wood, I don't know, I don't want to call them flaws in the wood, but the different textures and natural things that happen in wood to into my designs. So like this one, I just included that kind of darker spot into the mountain shape. Sometimes what I'll do, for example, this guy, the sun is the very center of this piece of wood, and there's a time, that's a very, so I'm using the rings of the wood as my guide for a little sun or moon or whatever I want to put there. So, and sometimes I just leave like this to me, I just leave that because I think it looks like, I mean, I can't take it away, but in this case, if I was doing a design, I would set up my design so that this would kind of look like the sun or the moon or something. Where I did a piece where I colored in a planet and it looked like, you know, it was Jupiter with the spot in the middle. So just different. It's one of the things I really love about wood is the ability to just kind of go with it and have fun with it, and it kind of guides you and tells you, you know, what you should do based on its own shapes and things. So, all right. So normally, okay, we'll put a couple more trees in, and this is where the hardware would go to hang it on the wall. That's why there's a hole there, and that's, you know, I just burn around it because it's going to get covered with a screw anyway. So. And in this case, I'm not drawing a line, I'm just putting in these trees, and I'm just using that, like I said, that kind of flat edge. And you can see that places where the wood is darker, it takes more time to burn. So it takes, you know, more heat to actually burn a shape. So I'll spend more time on those places where the wood is darker because it's more dense and requires more heat to get going. Okay, so there's some more trees. And then I would probably do like some little background trees. So to give it depth. So in this one, for example, I have these like little peaks of trees, and you're just they look like they're behind this tree. So I just kind of very lightly will burn in basically just hints of trees back there. See, so I'm barely touching this burner to the wood. I'm just very gentle, light. You can see I'm just kind of throwing in some trunks in the background, and I can make one a little darker than the others, you know, make them, these are all, no trees to go with them yet, but then I go up here and I'll just add some more shapes that look like trees. So then that creates kind of that depth. Maybe make another kind of darker one here, and maybe something a little darker here so it's not as light. So it's been basically just, I go a little slower so that the pen has more time to you know, burn into the wood and burn a slightly darker shade. So right now I'm just doing the super light. I'm just kind of going in and pretending there's trees back here and filling that in. And now it kind of looks like a little clump of trees. And I can finish that up here. And we're almost done, and I'll show you how you finish, and then we'll be finished. We'll finish and we'll be finished. Okay, and I'm just creating this little line of, and you know, getting shorter trees as we come down. I could add a taller tree here if I want. And this one's a little further away, so I'm not doing it quite as dark or as detailed. It's just more just, and this is literally just, I'm just scribbling. It's not scribble scrabble. It's nothing fancy. It's just little scribbles that somehow, when they're all put together, look like trees. I'll do the same with this one. Okay, so there now we have a bunch of trees. And you could do, for example, you could put in these lighter trees if you wanted to, and then add a darker tree right over the top of them. You know, if you wanted to say, oh, I need one more tree in the foreground. And this is literally just playing with my wood burner right now. That's all it is. I'm not worried about lumps and bumps because they're trees and they can be that way. So there you have it. Now, if I want to add in some, so this isn't so solidly white or light colored, I can just come in and I'm just do just like I was doing with the trees, but I am barely going to touch my wood, and I'm going to go really fast and just kind of scribble, scrabble in some rocks, some shadows to make it look more natural and less like just plain wood. Of course, some people, they like that and it looks nice. You know, if you want that higher contrast and you don't want to fill this in, you don't have to. And what I'm doing is I'm kind of adding shadow like right behind these mountains, like the mountains themselves are casting shadows behind them. So I'm adding a little extra, just very quickly, very fast, just floating this tool. In fact, I'm not even letting the weight of the tool be on here. I'm kind of really controlling, barely touching, and it's just scribble, scribble. There's no, and the main thing is I just don't want to spend a lot of time on there, because then I start creating more the shape of my tool and not just natural shapes. So if I like stop and so if I'm scrabbling like here, right, and I'm trying to get these natural shapes, and then I stop, I start getting more lines. But we can add in a couple little rocky spots here. There. I might add in a couple more really light hints of trees in the background here. There. So that's all, that would be a completed burn right there. That would be done. That is done. If I was, we'll see, and like this one, this is kind of fun because I just did a different shapes on here, but you can make these, so you can add more if you wanted. Make it your own. So like if I wanted to make this way darker, I could. So. And sometimes it helps to just stand back and not do anything for a little bit and then come back to it later and add stuff if you want. Hold it, you know, walk away, look at it from a distance, because when you get yourself caught up into looking at the details, you might not be happy with it because it doesn't look perfect, but it's nature, so it's not going to look exactly geometric or perfectly shaped. So there. So I'm just going in, adding a few little details. Kind of a one fun thing I like to do with projects is sometimes I'll just take the edge of my tool and I'll just burn like take that flat edge and just darken right on the corner of the wood, because it'll create like a little frame. So I'm just running that flat edge right along the tip, this corner. Okay. So with a project like this, I would put my oil, I'm going to put my oil on before we put the hardware on it. And the oil, you can finish with an acrylic spray or a varnish if you want. That would make it more durable. And then you wouldn't have to redo it like you would if you put oil on it. You know, you're still going to be able to, it'll still be protected, and you're still going to be able to wipe it with like a damp cloth to clean it. But it will dry out, and you'll probably want to add more oil at some point, you know, another layer of oil. So I have used spray on, wipe on polyurethane, just different ways. But today, for this class, because it's safer, I just have my food grade oil that I use. Okay, so this is done. That's what it looks like. I'm not seeing any questions. Feel free to interrupt me if you have questions. And I just take my oil and I just use my fingers to spread it on. It's totally safe, food grade. And one thing I like about this oil is it doesn't really change the color of the wood. So it makes it nice and keeps it that nice light color. And I just keep dipping in and put a generous amount of oil on there. I just use my hands, and then I'll pick it up and I'll just rub the whole thing with the oil, and then give it a chance to kind of soak in there. I didn't talk about erasing my pencil lines because I just burned over them all, so you can't see any. But if you have pencil lines that you want to erase, or graphite lines, you can use an eraser, a regular eraser. And I'll show you. Let me get the oil off, and then I'll show you. Okay. The regular eraser doesn't always work so well for graphite, but I have what's called a sand eraser. And it's an eraser with, this is the brand I use, the Mono Sand Eraser. And it has just little bits of silicate in it. And so it's more abrasive than a regular eraser. And you can erase pencil or graphite with that. And for the really stubborn lines, I just use really fine sandpaper. Okay, so when I'm oiling it, I oil it and then I just take a cloth. This is just I use some old dishcloths and I cut them up into little rectangles and I use them. And just really rub that in. Maybe give it a day and put more oil on if you want, rub it in more. But that'll protect it. And just as an example, this piece right here, I just finished it with oil. So the same exact oil I put on here, I used it on here, and it darkened it just a little, but not much. And I use this as a coaster, and I have put a wet, a glass of ice water on here, and it drips on it, and it, gets really wet, and it still protected it. So you don't see damage from the water. So the oil does a really good job of protecting the wood. Okay, and so then the hardware that I use, I get from, I just got mine off of Amazon, just because I can buy a box of 12 of them. And before I do this project, I cut the wood and I pre-drill my holes. So this small holes for this guy, and then the big holes with a countersink bit so that the wall screws will go right in. And then these just get put on here. And if I was in my garage, I'd be using my electric drill to put these in, but since we're here, I'm just using, since we're in my kitchen, we're gonna do this by hand. And I've made the holes slightly smaller than the actual size of this, of the screws, so they're a little difficult to put in by hand, especially when your hands are oily. So but it works really well with an electric drill to just push them in. And the screws that come with this hardware, with this bottle opener, they're just the right length for this 3/4 inch.
Crytsal, could you remind us what kind of oil that was again?
3/4 inch. It's just a mixture of beeswax and food grade mineral oil. And I do it in a ratio of 3:1. So 3 grams or tablespoons or whatever you use of the mineral oil to 1 of the beeswax. So it's still pretty, you know, pretty soft and pliable. It's about, I don't know, probably 70 degrees Fahrenheit in here. And it's pretty, pretty soft. You could add extra beeswax if you wanted it to be a little harder and less liquid, but I like this texture because it rubs in nicely, makes my hands nice and soft. And I don't worry about it, you know, having any kind of chemical. All right, there we go. So there's our little bottle opener, and I use to attach it to a wall, or I use just wood screws, as long as it's wood that you're screwing into or something, you know, well, wood. In our house, it's wood with sheetrock, so you want to make sure you're going into a stud. But if you don't have a stud, I just use drywall anchors, and I'll stick those in the drywall, and then I'll just screw this right into the wall with that. And I do use my electric drill for that because that's a lot of work, and usually the stud behind you isn't pre-drilled, so so yeah. And that gets attached, and then it's a nice solid bottle opener, and you can catch the bottle caps. Some people will even attach a little basket at the bottom. One thing I do, which I didn't do with this, and I'll show you on my example. So this one the wood was a little darker to start with. And so the finish that I used darkened it quite a bit. But this one, I put magnets on the back so that when I drop a bottle cap on here, it just sticks to the wood. So let's see, here's a little, I don't have a bottle cap with me, but you can, oh, that's not magnetized, so it won't. Anyway, so what I'll use is I have a Forstner drill bit, and I just drill a hole halfway through this plank, so about 1/4 inch in, maybe a little more than that, and then glue in these high-powered magnets. And that's enough magnetizing to hold a bottle cap. When you pop it off, it'll just slide down and just hang out right there. So that's kind of a fun way to do it, but that's a little more of an involved project. But if you have a Forstner bit and you have the magnets, it's a fun That's a fun way to do it. But otherwise, you can just catch your bottle opener caps, your bottle caps. That's all I can say if I can speak properly. So any questions, thoughts? I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Oh, there you go. What kind of, oh, we got the oil. Yes, I'd like to see people's work. I would love that. So if you worked on this project, if we can unpin I want to see Tracy. So hang on. Let me look at Tracy. I'm going to make you bigger so I can see you. So hang on a second. Oh, lovely. Good job. So you draw that on there and then you can unmute yourself. Did you draw?
Yeah.
You drew it.
I just did a quick draw. I mean, like you said, there were kind of triangles and then I kind of free formed the trees. And so it was so super fun and super easy. I'm really inspired. I'm going to burn everything.
No, that's how let me turn my video on so I can see you guys too. That's how I started and went crazy with it. It was just so much fun to just play with it. So yeah.
They want to know what kind of eraser again, what kind of eraser that was.
Yes. So this is the mono, this one, the brand is a mono sand eraser by Tombow. You can see the little tiny Tombow sand eraser. I don't know of any other brand that makes them, but I'm sure there are. People also call them pen erasers. So if that might be another way to search for this kind of an eraser. I've never used it to erase pen. I just use it for my wood projects, and it's the one that's easily accessible, here in the US. So that's what I get. Any other questions? Let's see if I can do that. I'm trying to.
So I want to remind everybody, if you could put in your chat where you're from.
Yeah.
Also, Crytsal, if they want to I know you had kits available beforehand. Do you still have kits available if they want to buy it from you?
Yes. First, I want to say.
Will you put that in the messages in the chat so they can go to the right place to get that?
Yep, let me put it in. And I'm seeing Kim's project, and I just want to call that out and say how cool I think that is.
Kim, speak so that it'll spotlight you then.
I love that. Did you draw that on there, Kim?
So I drew I wanted to add little sun or moon because I felt like it was a bit too empty at the top.
Yeah, that's perfect. I love it.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna put in my wood burning kits. And yeah, so if you want to go back, I'm gonna just put the link to the exact kit in the chat here. If you want to go back and
this includes the wood burning tool as well as the kit to make the bottle opener. I was gonna do it, but I just didn't have a chance to. But it's very reasonable to get it from her. So
right. Yeah, so this is this kit is everything that I use today. So including the graphite paper, which I didn't have, and the wood conditioning oil, and then a brand new tool, and the hardware. So the only thing I want to say about that though is I am in the process of moving, so shipping, and also I can't really ship out of the US, and we have a lot of people here who aren't in the US. So, but and I can ship to Canada, so that's in there. I can ship to Canada, but not off the continent. So, but
do you have a
delay because I'm moving, and so all my stuff is in boxes, so it'll take me a few days to unpack everything. But if anybody orders, I will have that out within a few days.
For those people who are out of country, do you have a site that you would recommend them to get a wood burning tool from?
Well, I don't know a lot of Walnut Hollow is a good place to go. Amazon, if you're not, some people don't like to order from Amazon because it's, super big company and they're not really, but if you want to support a smaller company, there's Walnut Hollow, and there's lots of wood burners in the UK that would probably have some really good places to send you. And I follow, you can find them on Instagram, on Facebook, websites. I know it's a shame I can't ship internationally. I'm so sorry. I just have, I've been doing this just a few years and I don't have the capacity yet to do that. I hope to at some point. And I think I have shipped, and it can be difficult with wood and natural products. There's a lot of regulations on what is allowed to be shipped into certain countries. I even tried to send something to Australia and it couldn't happen. And I felt really bad. So I just kind of gave that up for a while until I can figure out a better way to do it. But there's people who source wood in other countries too. So, and you don't have to use exact same thing, you know, just, I go out into my yard and I just cut pieces of wood and make stuff. I use scraps from building projects. I use, and so you can get wood that way.
She probably stops at the side of the road when people are putting wood out there too.
Yeah, I do.
I know I would. I
Yep.
would.
Yeah, especially if I see like if it's birch or if it's something that I don't have easily accessible, I will do that. Or something interesting like a cherry tree or, you know, cherry wood, or I have a friend who grows black walnut in his backyard, and I traveled to go visit him and I just took some pieces home in my suitcase. But that has a really toxic smoke. So you really have to be careful with that if you're going to use black walnut, but it made some really pretty projects. So
I have one question for you. When you said you do the fan and you put it right in front of your workstation, do you make it so the fan is blowing at you to blow the smoke away or to pull the smoke away?
Yeah, so the fan blows away from me, so it pulls the smoke, and it's a pretty, the one I use is pretty powerful, but it's kind of cool. It's just
a little one.
It's just it's a component fan. So this is something that you would install into like the back of a computer or in just a space that you want to vent. So it's designed to like go into a wall or a cabinet or something. So it's pretty powerful, and it's very quiet. In fact, I didn't have it.
I didn't even hear it while you were burning.
Well, it wasn't on because I didn't want to have it. It's still a little bit here. I'll turn it on so you can. So it's got a little noise.
A little noise, yeah.
But not bad. And it pulls. I have to be careful because it will blow all the papers off my desk and pull things into it. And so, and I just got that just in electronics department somewhere. So that's a fun thing to use. But a mask is always good. You know, one of those, it's like an N95 level mask will also protect you from the smoke. And there's a lot of wood burners who don't even burn without a mask on. So
they're asking for other ideas. Don't you have a lot of stuff on your website?
Yeah, so there's my website, and I'll just put it in here real quick. I actually have a blog post I wrote pretty recently about where I can get wood. And I have bought wood I buy like boxes from thrift stores, secondhand stores, and burn those. I use wooden spoons. I've burned on my wooden cutting boards. So like stuff I have around the house, wooden spoons, cutting boards, you know, wooden handles, a desk. I have a friend who, as long as it doesn't have a finish on it, it's safe. It should be safe to burn. So
if it has a finish, then you're
don't burn something with a finish. So let's say you have a wooden desk that's already got a finish on it. You gotta, even sanding it, you're not likely to get all the finish off, and you'd still have some really toxic fumes with that. But I've seen people do it. You know, they'll take the finish off.
And that would also include pre-treated wood for outdoor stuff, right?
Wood, plywood, some kinds of plywood you can use, like those, you can buy like a wood canvas, and it'll have a really thin veneer on it. And you can burn that as long as you don't burn through to the glue below and, you know, release the smoke that way. But, you know, it's doable. It's totally doable with plywood, as long as it's that kind of veneer plywood and not composite. Yeah. Yeah, don't use composite, use real wood. There'll be more workshops. Yeah, so I will be offering more workshops. And like I said, we've been in the process of buying and selling a house and moving. And so I haven't scheduled anything new, but over the next couple months, I plan to. So, and they'll be on my website. If you use social media, I'm on Instagram mostly. I also on Facebook, but not as much. I tend to.
And do you put your events on Eventbrite as well?
Some of them, yes, but yeah, most of them end up on Eventbrite. So yeah, you could search Moss Tangle on Eventbrite, and they would show up there as well. Yep.
I think that's how I actually found you. So
Oh, fun. Good.
yes, thank you very much, Crytsal. Anybody else have any more questions? I don't think so.
All
So
right.
next month we're doing a crossover one. It's going to be a cake decorating class. So it's our crossover between our cultural creations and our cuisines of different cultures kind of thing. So it is on Eventbrite. It is also on our website. It is also on our Facebook page. And if you do Atlantic Institute South Carolina on any of those platforms, you will find us. I want to thank Crytsal very much. Thank you for doing this class for us. It was awesome. I probably am going to be sending you a request for a word burning cake. So I have a daughter who's very artistic, and I love getting her into different things. And I think doing some of that will be fun for some Christmas presents. Your little coaster thing, I was like, you know,
Coasters.
what do you get your elders who have everything? You know, you
Coasters
find something they like and you make something special for them. So
yeah, and Christmas ornaments are fun because, you know, just a little round with a string.
yes,
And
they're unique because you're wood burning them, hand drying them yourselves, kind of thing. And so I think that would be awesome fun. So I want to thank everybody. I am going to end this unless anybody has any more questions. This recording will be on our Atlantic Institute South Carolina YouTube channel by the end of next week. Our guy that does this is a volunteer. So thank you again, everybody, and have a great day.
Thank you so much. I had a great time. Bye.
Thank you.